All right, everybody, so it is 5 o'clock. Welcome to the July 28th Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting. This meeting is being held entirely in person with public either here or able to follow along on YouTube. Just a reminder for public who'd like to speak, you can come up to the microphone, wait to be recognized by the chair. State your full name, and if you have a relationship to the project, if you're a neighboring property owner, state that. For commissioners, I don't see you all in front of me on the screen now, so I'll have to look both ways to see who needs to be recognized. So just give me a second to do that. Raise your hand, and same situation, wait to be recognized. We won't need to do roll vote, so that should save us some time. I also ask that all cell phones be silenced during the meeting because we're back to that. And if you need to have conversation, please leave the room so that you're not distracting to people participating in the meeting. For commissioners, just make sure that you're speaking into your microphone and that the green light is actually on. If it's off, press push and it should turn on for you. With that, we will begin this evening's meeting with public comment on items not being heard tonight.
I always have volume issues here, so I'll ask the commission, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you very kindly. Some of you know me, a lot of you don't. I'm Vince Murphy, I'm the Coast Resilience Coordinator. I work for the Natural Resources Department. And I'm the project lead on assisting SBPF with the current and potential future geotube management and maintenance. On the 18th or 19th of July, hopefully you received a copy of the annual report. That should have been sent around. I think it was on the 18th potentially. So the town has been working with SBPF to rectify issues. We have also worked on a path to bring the structure and its operation back into compliance. One of the steps to do that is to jointly offer the 2021 annual review for consideration for the Conservation Commission. The 2021 annual review shows all aspects of the project operation to date and shows the sand deliveries for 2022 sand year. It also shows the questions the Commission raised in a workshop on February 22nd. These are extra parts that are not in a normal annual review and were inserted at the town's request as part of our joint work to show every aspect of the project and to answer standing questions. With that, we respectfully request that the Commission may read this report and that a date might be set for a public review as the Commission may need. And if possible, it would be nice if we could set that date for August 4th as the Commission may allow. With that, I would like to introduce Meredith Mollenhauser, who now works with SBPF and is taking on a senior role with that organization.
Short, sorry. Hi, nice to meet everybody. My name is Meredith Moldenhauer. I'm a homeowner on Baxter Road and here on behalf of SBPF. I'm happy today to be able to start talking to you and to say that obviously, we are sorry that the Geo2 project has been such a source of frustration for you, the Conservation Commission, the town, and the Wisconsin community. We are hopeful that with a new voice, you'll be able to hear the current annual report that Vince just referenced, as well as future applications for geotube expansion with hopefully an open mind and an open heart. We submit to you in the town that we are looking forward to finding a reasonable path forward that can be done in a safe and science-protected way for the beaches. And we are happy tonight to be joined by town staff and supported by town leadership. And we really want to be able to be here to listen to comments from the Conservation Commission and suggestions that will hopefully lead to a path forward, both for the current project as well as an expansion. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Jeff, question for you. Has Greg Berman gotten a look at the 2021 report?
So Greg does have a copy of it. Like he usually does, he likes to take a look at it and then kind of guesstimate how long he's going to take to go through it. I haven't been able to connect with him since he received it, other than acknowledging that he received it, and also to confirm from you guys that you obviously still wanted him to review the project and provide that same kind of analysis that he traditionally has. So I can try my best to get that from him as quickly as possible, but I know he has a full workload too, so he's squeezing it in, but I just don't have that date right yet.
No, thank you for that. That's kind of what I figured. It would be a quick turnaround for him. So August 4th seems a little bit too soon because we would want his review before we would have that meeting, is my feeling. It's the way we normally have done it.
So I think my suggestion, kind of hearing that, is I'll obviously press him as much as we can to get that. Maybe we'll add it as a agenda item on our regular meeting on the 11th. And if we feel that it needs a special discussion beyond their schedule, it then I think would be about the quickest we could do it, depending upon how fast he can turn that around.
Okay.
Well, I have a question,
Yes, go ahead, Ian.
which I don't know whether I should address Jeff through you.
Yeah, make sure.
Could you speak into your
mic too.
microphone? Sorry, you got to get pretty close.
So, Mike, can you hear me now? It is on, but
Yeah, it's
The light's
on.
on.
the light's on.
Because you gotta get really close to these things.
Can you hear me? Barely? Well, damn it. Can you hear me now?
That one might not.
Try sets.
How's that? Is that?
Yeah,
Yes,
now we
that
can
is-
hear you.
That is better. Thank you, Seth. So I'm a little puzzled because haven't we ordered it to be removed, and aren't we waiting for the appeal? So why are we proceeding as though the removal order doesn't exist? Thank you.
Jeff, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So with that pending, and until that judge's decision is there, I believe the idea is to maintain the structure in compliance with the order until the judge renders a decision. And the reporting requirements for 2021 are still technically in effect until that decision is rendered. So I think there was hopes to still maintain and demonstrate that reports are still required and still coming in. And then if the judge's order makes that moot, then that makes that moot. But if it does not, then we're still having to deal with the conditions in the existing order of conditions.
Any other questions from commissioners about that? Okay. Any other public comment this evening? Go ahead.
Is this mic on? No?
Yeah, I guess that one's not on.
They've had trouble with that for several meetings.
Thank you, Chair. It's been RJ Turcotte on behalf of the Nantucket Land Council. The Land Council has held several public meetings in the last couple of weeks in regard to fertilizer in the harbor. And one of the other things that has come up pretty frequently is stormwater runoff and questions from the public about some of the bigger players, especially downtown. So I brought in 8 copies this evening. Jeff, I brought you a copy, but you already have a letter from 2016 to Winthrop Management, which is the parking lot right by the boat basin. There are concerns that the stormwater infiltration and the oil absorbent pads in there aren't being maintained properly. And according to this 2016 letter, they were required to provide field inspections and provide them to the Conservation Commission every 2 months. So I'll hand these into you folks, but just curious whether they have been submitting those and whether that is being maintained properly. Thank you.
Thank you, RJ. Jeff, do you know anything about that?
We do have a few on file. I think after RJ sends that around, we'll compile all of the ones that we have and send to you. And then if there's action that needs to be taken, we certainly can take that action as we have before.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, RJ, for bringing this to our
Thank
attention
you.
again.
I think Mr. Bailey may want to speak on this.
Just very briefly, just For the record, Dan Bailey, and I represent Winthrop Management. And Winthrop Management no longer owns the parking lot. The only thing Winthrop Management owns, or First Winthrop, whichever entity you want, in the downtown anymore, is the tank farm.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, do you know who they sold it to?
Oh, I do. Yeah, NED. So Nantucket.
New
Island
England
Resorts.
Development.
Oh, New England,
All
okay.
right, we will follow up with both those parties to get the information that we're looking for.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, New England Development, he said. All right, any other public comment this evening? Okay, so the following items are continued. Under notice of intent, we have Brant Point Club LLC at 6 and 8 North Beach Street and 4 Dolphin Court, continued until August 11th. We have Town of Nantucket at 98, 100, and 104 Washington Street, continued until August 11th. Under amended orders of conditions, we have Phillips Trustee at 19 East Tristram Ave, continued until August 11th. And then under certificates of compliance, we have Morris and Smith at 235 Matticat Road, also continued until August 11th. So we will begin the meeting under notices of intent. We have 13 Commercial Street LLC at 13 Commercial Wharf, and this is a withdrawal. So we just need to make a motion to accept the withdrawal.
Also move.
All right, motion made by Mark. Is there a second?
Second without prejudice.
Seconded by Linda without prejudice. So all in favor?
Right.
Any,
That's weird.
any opposed? All right, that carries unanimously. Should save us some
I'm so
time.
used to one person at a time. Isn't that weird?
All right, so that moves us on to Arac LLC at 14 Gosnold Road, represented by David Haynes.
Just really quickly, Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt, David, if you guys want to see, I do have all of the plans as paper copies with me. If you want to see them off of the screen, I'm happy to provide for any of the filings. Just want to let everyone know that they're here.
Thank you, Jeff.
Right. Good evening. This on?
It is
Yeah.
on.
David Haynes for the applicant. First off, we still haven't heard from Natural Heritage yet, so we are going to have to continue again. It hasn't been the 30 days. It's about 3 days short. We have submitted a revised plan after the last meeting. Just to refresh your memory, this is a request to install a swimming pool and to reconfigure the driveway on this property. Everything is outside of 50. The 25 foot is being maintained. Actually, portions of the 25 to 50 are being restored. You do have a revised landscape plan. Concerns came up about runoff off the driveway and how to handle that. We have proposed a low, very low berm around the edge of the driveway and on the lower section, and replanting it with a combination of, I don't have it in front of me, sweet pepper bush and bay, I believe. And then also you had concerns about the vegetation that was being replanted to reestablish a vegetated buffer, that it all be indigenous and no cultivars. And that has been provided by Jardin Landscaping.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you, David.
You think he can put it up on the screen? This is taking an hour to load for some reason.
Jeff, is it possible to put plans up on this screen if it's not loading well? Or can you walk them around? Do you have the plan so Linda can see?
Yes, I do. I can't put them on that screen. I don't have access to that. That's through the NCTV, but I can provide the paper plans for sure.
All right, 'cause for some reason it's
Yeah,
just
that
not
would be
loading.
great. It's loading slowly. Any questions from commissioners? David, thank you for providing those changes.
You're welcome.
We'll just wait a minute to get this plan out and see if any
That's all right, I
questions
was looking at
materialize. Okay,
Excuse
I'm
me, Madam
fine.
Chair.
yes.
So I see that the vegetated berm is going to extend into the 25-foot buffer. And I know there are concerns about trying to protect that buffer that's why the berm is there in the first place. But is there any way to not have it in the 25-foot buffer?
So I don't have the plan in front of me either. So yes, we can tweak that a little bit and pull it up. So it'll be outside of the 25.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Seth, for that question. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
It must be just inside of the 25.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah. And-
like
Just
the
a corner.
left, well, I don't know what orientation I'm looking at, but one of the sides, it's just half of one of the sides.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the western.
West, yeah,
Yeah.
I have it rotated. Northwestern side.
Right,
So
so,
that shouldn't be a problem. I mean, it is being replanted with indigenous reestablishment, but that will be done.
perfect. Well, if there are no other questions, David, would you like to continue for 2 weeks to wait for Heritage?
Yes, please.
Okay, this will continue until August 11th.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That moves us on to Coburn at 5 High Brush Path, represented by Mark Ritz.
Good afternoon, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 5 High Brush. You heard this project at the last meeting. Since then, we have provided a revised plan which correctly labels the secondary structure on the property as a garage, which is its current and intended use. We have removed an outdoor shower from jurisdictional areas. We have also removed a sewer connection from that garage from within jurisdiction. So the project in front of you for review includes a small overhang on the wetland side of that garage, which is well outside the 50-foot buffer, and it is an overhang, no pillars or supports, and an upgrade of an existing conventional septic system to an IA system. Portions of the septic system within jurisdiction are the tanks and sewer lines going out to the leach field, which is outside the 100-foot buffer. And that is all.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I see the updated plan. It all looks good to me, but I still have some confusion about whether the system actually is an IA system or not. I think that any septic upgrade is better than what's there before, but from reading the plan, it doesn't say Innovative Alternative or Septic Tech or any of the other companies I know on there. So I just want to make sure the plans match what we're saying in the hearing.
In the detail on page 2 of the plan, it does call out a Septitech system, and it is an IA system. And if you need any clarification, Dan Malloy is here, who designed the system, and can speak to that if further clarification is needed. But it is an IA system.
Looking at the plan, it's an IA system.
So, Mark, did you have a question?
Thank you. Mark, tell me, what is the plan used for the garage?
A garage, and I believe they want to do something like an exercise studio above, and they'd like to have a bathroom facility there for that purpose.
And how would you respond to Mr. Gibson's comment that the garage should not exist? There's a ban against ancillary buildings on those lots.
No, it's only banned against secondary dwellings.
I'm not asking you.
I'm just saying.
As has been discussed previously, there's a ban against secondary dwellings. The garage is not intended as a secondary dwelling, and that's also not an issue that is relevant to this board.
I understand. Are you running water to the building?
The plan is to have a bathroom in the exercise space, so there would be water and septic service for that bathroom, yes.
And the septic and water are out of our jurisdiction, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Yeah, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
I mean, if I may, or Dan Malloy may, could you show me on the plan? Actually, I found it. I see Septic Tech now. Thank you.
All right. Any other further questions or comments from commissioners? And Mark, thank you for providing those changes. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes, you do.
Mark, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion to close?
moved.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Seth. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Lehrman Dynasty Trust at 18 Washing Pond Road, also represented by Mark Ritz.
Good afternoon. Once again, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicant at 18 Washing Pond. I'm joined by Dan Bailey and Dan Malloy if required. This is a project that the commission has heard several times. I'd like,
One time.
well, one time in this iteration, but they have heard it previously. But this we have gone over this. But I would like to start us off with a very brief summary of the proposed project. Subject property includes a bulkhead and 2 groins, which were both constructed circa 1975 and predate the State Wetlands Protection Act and the local wetlands bylaw. Our view on these structures is that because they predate those sets of regulations, they are a grandfathered structure and or use. The eastern of the 2 groins was substantially damaged during the January 2022 storm. A few of the piles were taken out, as well as pretty much most of the cross members. Our intention is to rebuild that groin exactly as it was previously permitted, same length, same footprint, same essential design, an in-kind repair and replacement of that grandfathered structure. We feel that this is a project which is comparable to a number of other coastal engineering structure repair and rebuild projects which have occurred on the island. We have, at the first meeting, we provided a plan that provided 2 sets of stairs to provide access up and over the bulkhead, one accessing from the west over the western groin, and then one accessing from the east over the eastern groin, with ability to walk between them on the landward side of the bulkhead. The applicant does not wish to construct these stairs. The applicant is willing to construct the stairs if the enhanced access is a condition of approval. So we have provided a second plan for this meeting that if the commission is not swayed by the improved access, we'd like to go back to our original proposal and not have the stairs, because we would really like to do just an in-kind replacement. However, if it is the wish of the commission, we are willing to provide the enhanced access. We feel that this project is not subject to the performance standards because we feel it is a grandfathered use and in a grandfathered structure. We feel that we've provided ample alternatives analysis and other evaluations of this site historically. And that's pretty much the summary I have. I know Mr. Bailey would like to add some things, so I will step aside and let him do so.
Just a minute. By the way, it is actually really nice to see everyone, but I'd love to go back to remote.
He was gonna fight you on that. I don't think so.
You didn't like the commute today?
I said to Jeff earlier, I said, if it was up to me, and obviously it's not, there would be no hearings in Nantucket in the summer.
Anything you have to drive to.
No flights, hard to get reservations. You know. So, I'm just going to reiterate, just for the record, Dan Bailey, Pierce Atwood. I'm going to hand Jeff a couple piles of stuff. These Mark mentioned prior orders where the commission had approved in-kind replacement. So I've got a bunch of them here. Yeah, that would be wonderful, Stephen. Let me give you something else. So, two sets there along the list. out to.
It's
Yeah,
very
I've got the
amusing.
list up on the board, but I don't want to quite get to that yet. As Mark said, just reiterating, this is a pre-existing use. Our view is the Nantucket regs allow the use of, and normal maintenance, this is what the definition of grandfathering structure, grandfathering pre-existing use says, allows the use and normal maintenance of any structure or use of land within resource areas existing at the time of enactment of the State Wetlands Protection Act or the Nantucket Wetlands Bylaw may be continued subject to the following. Existing structures not extended or altered are permitted by, existing structures that are extended or altered are permitted by a finding of the commission that such extension or alteration shall have no adverse effect on the resource areas and protected interests. So talking with the client, the commission asked us last time to look to see if we could better enhance the stairway access. We did look at that, but we simply don't have the physical space to do it. We'd have to go onto the abutting property. So what we've done is we've proposed, two alternatives, as Mark said. One is an alternative with stairs. If you go that way, then you would have to make a finding that there is not a material effect on a resource area. I would argue that this does not diminish a resource area. It actually furthers an interest of the act, which is a recreational interest, which several members of the board have commented on during these hearings. If you are inclined not to go with the stairs, you do not need to make that finding. We had this back and forth, I think, last time, but instead, it's our view that as a pre-existing structure, the commission is obligated to approve it subject to typical types of conditions that the commission imposes. So what I just handed to Stephen to hand to Jeff are 10 orders of conditions that you have issued for the most part in the last 5 years, including, and they're listed here. There are a few of them that I want to talk more specifically about. There are 4 on Hallowell Lane. They were all for repair, replacement of timber groins. In one case, there was also a bulkhead. Hallowell Lane is just down the beach from this particular project. And move around here. I knew that was going to happen.
See, visual aids are always going to be a problem.
So this is on the left. I know I'll get yelled at if I don't talk into the microphone. We've got a site plan of 13 Hallowell Lane, and this one is also 13 Hallowell Lane. This is, anyway, what we've got here are bulkheads, timber groins, all of which were proposed. It says repair, replace timber groin in kind. Repair, replace timber groin in kind. This is order of conditions SE 482962 from May of 2007. The other one is 3225 from August of 2019. And these orders permitted the repair and replacement of existing groin structures within coastal beach and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. In another location, again, it's kind of a stretch of structures on Hallowell Lane. Now we are at 9 Hallowell Lane and 7 Hallowell Lane. And similarly, we have remove and replace rotten portions of timber groin in kind. Arrows going to timber groin there. Very similar, actually much longer than the timber groin that we're looking to repair. And then we've got one down here at 9 Hallowell, also remove and replace rotten portions of timber groin in kind. The point that I'm making, obviously, is that this commission has in the recent past allowed the repair and replacement of pre-existing grandfathered structures. It's done it in close proximity to what we're proposing here. And, I think that we're not asking for anything different than what the commission has traditionally approved. And I could get, all lawyerly and talk about administrative law principles and the importance of consistency, but you've heard that from me before, and, we'll move past that. The other thing I'd like to point out, we've had a kind of a back and forth over the interpretation of the pre-existing structure and grandfathering definition, and whether it applies to just structures, to buildings protected by structures, and whether the performance standards apply. And, I should have provided this to you long ago. It slipped my mind, but we litigated this. And Ian and Ashley were on the commission when we litigated it. And the name of the case is Corey v. Nantucket Conservation Commission. This is the Petrels Wharf case that you might remember, down next to Commercial Wharf, where the land bank is proposing to rehab Petrels Wharf, rebuild the bulkheads there and the another coastal erosion structure, and basically build a dock so it's available for public access. We've represented an abutter there who has opposed that. And we took the position in that litigation that the commission could not approve the rehab of these structures because there was no building to protect. We lost. The Superior Court said otherwise, and I'll give a copy of this to Jeff as well. So, that issue has been resolved. I apologize, because literally 2 days ago, I finally said to myself, oh my gosh, yeah, we dealt with this once. I don't have anything other than that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm going to plunge in here, Dan. So it's nice to see you.
Ian,
Go through you.
Sorry.
You have to go through you.
you gotta come through me.
I beg your pardon.
Forgive me. May I, after you?
Yeah, just wait a second. So, Dan, have you submitted electronic copies of these photos to Jeff, or can you?
We can.
Because it would be helpful to see where these structures interact with the high tide line and things of that
And they
nature.
are in those orders that I just handed to Jeff.
Okay.
So,
Because it would be good to us to have this to review kind of ahead of time so that we can, think of it. I think Ian has a question for this one. I'll give it to you.
Indeed. I don't want to appear too eager here. And Dan, it's great to see you two in person, but I would agree with you that Zoom in many ways is easier. So we may be addressing that later on during this meeting. So you didn't appeal that to the Supreme Court, did you? And so in other
no,
words,
we didn't take it beyond the Superior Court.
Exactly. Okay. So humor me, would you, for a moment? I've been looking at your very comprehensive application, and the original license was license number 3242, which is on page 88 of your 159-page application. And it says standard waterways license conditions. Number 9 is, in accordance with the public easement that exists by law on private tidelands, the licensee shall allow the public to use and pass freely upon the area of the subject property lying between the high and low water marks for the purposes of fishing, filing, navigation, and the natural derivations thereof. No restriction on the exercise of such public rights within the intertidal area shall be imposed unless otherwise expressly provided in this license. And then 10, unless otherwise expressly provided by this license, the licensee shall not limit the hours of availability of any areas of the subject property designated for public passage, nor place any gates, fences, or other structures within such areas in a manner that would impede or discourage the free flow of pedestrian movement thereon. So please tell me why your this project is not in compliance with its original conditions.
I'll tell you why it is in compliance. I mean, what you're reading from Ian, of course, just so everybody understands, is the Chapter 91 waterways license that was issued for this particular site. That waterways license authorizes the bulkhead and the bulkhead and actually 3 groins. When we were before the commission probably 15 years ago for a rebuild of the bulkhead, we agreed to take out 1 groin. But the groin that exists out there, groins that exist out there now, and the one that we're trying to rebuild are the groins that were authorized by that waterways license. And it's inherent in the waterways license that DEP is approving the groins and saying, these groins are approved subject to, public access, to the, I'm not saying, I'm not getting this out right, but, the groins are approved and it's got a standard condition about access. And that's very typical of DEP licenses.
So, so I'm referring to the bulkhead as a whole, rather than referring specifically to the groin. And of course, when this was permitted, as we've discussed about in detail, the groin that you wish to replace was above the low tide mark, which has changed significantly. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it would seem to me that the whole project, the bulkhead, is out of compliance with the original orders of conditions, because clearly you cannot, at the moment, freely access the intertidal zone. And so I'm just asking you to confirm that you cannot freely access the intertidal zone as laid out clearly in numbers 9 and 10 of the original license.
Well, I don't think that that's really changed. I think what you're suggesting is that climate change and sea level rise can cause you to go into non-compliance with a permit, and I don't think that's right.
So I want to be careful to avoid their Chapter 91 status, just because we are not the overseeing entity there. Although they are good questions island-wide.
And thank you, Ashley, because I agree. I'm bringing it up now because I'm going to propose under Commissioner's comments that we write a letter to the DEP about this project being out of compliance, and I didn't want to blindside the applicant representative.
We appreciate that.
And so, thank you,
that's
Dan.
fine.
So I do, I guess, have a question or comment. So I completely understand that this is a pre-78 structure. On the surface, would seem that you guys could rebuild this in kind. When I read the grandfathered uses, however, I see a little bit of a shift there, because when this went in 1978, it would have been a bulkhead protecting the coastal bank on a beach. And now the use has shifted because, from the plan you provided, the majority of the bulkhead and the groin you're trying to rebuild is inland under the ocean. So I do find that problematic with us allowing kind of the grandfathering, because I think the use has changed in that in this environment.
And my response to that would be that your definition of grandfathering and pre-existing uses doesn't speak to changes in resource areas. It just says that if you have a grandfathered structure, you can rebuild it. And the case that I cited says that it's not subject to the performance standards. So the whole question of what the resource area and the applicable performance standards are, I don't think comes in.
I appreciate you citing that case. I'll have to look into it further. I think the difference is Petrol Landing's resource areas didn't change.
Nor was it appealed.
Any other questions, comments from commissioners? Linda?
Been making notes as we've been going through this. I find it very interesting. I know the property well. I've dealt with grandfathering. They don't like the word grandfathering anymore because apparently it has some negative connotation. And so now they're using pre-existing non-conforming. I still use grandfathering. I sort of agree with what's been said about trying to put on today's performance standards on something that actually predates the state and the local bylaws. So I'm having trouble doing that. And I don't believe we should be discussing Chapter 91. If somebody wants to make a complaint up to the state about it, then that's fine, but that's not this board as an entity, in my opinion. I think they've repaired it and maintained it. I know we've had discussions in the past about the fact that they've been accused of not maintaining it and not repairing it in a timely manner. I believe the previous permits that were issued by the Concom has addressed some of that and accepted the fact that that house went away, came back, and didn't even come up when they were repairing and maintaining. I have a hard time changing the rules and expecting somebody to comply with today's standards when something has been in existence for 40 some odd years. I believe they have repaired and maintained it. I know we have climate change and the ocean's changing and things are happening which are not in their control. I know the recent storm, I believe it was Henry, took a bite out of it. And they have to repair it. No matter what happens, they have to repair it. I think they have a right to keep it there. I think they have a right to repair and maintain and continue on. I don't agree with it. We should be able to take it out. I'm not of that mindset on several projects. Just because you don't like it today doesn't mean you can make it go away. And I don't see a big difference in other projects, especially up there on the North Shore, which I'm familiar with, having grown up there. But I don't think it's that much different than allowing everybody else to repair and maintain. Things have changed over time, correct, but I don't think we have any right to take it out. It's the same type of thing as the town pier, which has been battered over and over and over and over again by storms, because it was built in a certain way that just leaves it vulnerable, and they're allowed to replace that all the time, which seems to be constant now. I think we've pretty much finessed the cottage part of this. I don't see as it's irrelevant at this point. Chapter 91 is irrelevant at this point. This is a groin and a bulkhead being discussed all by itself without being attached to something else. But I'm not one of those people that is in favor of the stairs at all. I see a massive liability. I see a massive problem with it. One storm is going to rip them right off, and they'll be thrown down the beach somewhere towards Nantucket probably. So that's pretty much where my head is at the moment.
Thank you, Linda. I agree that some other structures have had the ability to repair. When I look at Town Pier, again, the resource areas haven't changed there. That's why I'd like to look at some of Mr. Bailey's examples a little bit more closely, because my assumption is they maybe didn't shift in the way that this project has shifted, in my opinion, to no longer have its use grandfathered. Any other questions, Seth?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So getting back to the pre-existing use, it says existing structures, uses, and alterations of land may not be extended and or modified unless such extension or modification is permitted by a finding of the commission that such alteration or modification has no adverse impact. It doesn't say necessarily that that modification has to be purposeful. The modification could be accidental or a result of environmental factors. But I do think that in order to actually deny this project from being able to conform or being able to obtain its rights under pre-existing use, we would actually need to discuss how it's been modified. So we know the resource area has changed. But then I think we need to go beyond that and talk about, has the use of the structure, either purposefully or by natural causes, changed? Like, for instance, if you had a bulkhead out on the beach and then it went in the water, and theoretically, I know they didn't do this, but now it's in land under ocean, and they built it up as a offshore reef or as a artificial reef for fishing, that's obviously a modification of use. Here, nothing has been done to the structure except there was one modification that was permitted purposely, but that doesn't mean that the use hasn't necessarily changed. I think in order to make that finding, we need to talk about how that use has potentially changed. I don't think we can really deny them their rights without doing that.
Thank you, Seth. Linda?
We're talking a lot about use, but under most bylaws, there is also a pre-existing structure protection. And I believe the structure protection is really where we need to talk about the structure protection as being pre-existing, not just the use. So I'm not sure how to parse that, because the structure is clearly pre-existing.
Great.
Madam
Ian, go
Chair.
ahead.
So I would disagree with Linda, and we're all in agreement that there is no longer a pre-78 building there. And we asked town council for an opinion as to whether the bulkhead itself could be considered a structure. And I believe town council was of the opinion that it could be argued in court that it was not a structure, that it was not entitled to Chapter 91 protection on its own. Am I correct in saying that?
I don't think its license status under Chapter 91 is in question. I mean, it's clearly a licensed structure with a valid license. So I think the debate you're talking about is whether or not the bulkhead itself qualifies as a pre-78 structure under the regulations. But I think what we're dealing with here is, again, a structure that clearly predates 1983, when our regulations, the local town regulations, came in, and the State Act, which came in 72, was kind of sandwiched in the middle of it. Not to muddy the waters for anybody, but I think also a little bit of a permit history of it being in front of the commission. And I'm not saying that we can't revisit previous decisions, because I think it's incumbent to look at any previously issued permit when it comes back in front of the board and applying performance standards appropriately has been permitted. So I think Seth hit the nail on the head a little bit, is looking at that pre-existing use criteria and kind of putting it through the analysis that he was talking about of figuring out whether or not the use has changed or it's been modified. I think that's probably the best path to explore for a positive or negative decision on this.
Thank you, Jeff. Ian, go ahead.
So since it was clearly constructed originally to protect a pre-78 house, and since it now is just on its own, then clearly its use has changed.
We could delve into that, Ian, as part of the conversation. Yeah. Mark, did you have your hand up?
I did. Mr. Bailey, I need help with a point on land under the ocean. Because of it's changed over many, many years now, so there is a lot of water around the bulkhead and around the two groins. I'd like to read to you from part of our Nantucket wetland bylaw, now Chapter 91. It says residential piers shall be constructed so as not to change shoreline movement of sediment, harm shellfish resources, obstruct commercial fishing, or obstruct the reserved public rights of fishing, fouling, navigation, and passage. So with this construction of the groin, that to me would restrict the passage, because it's changed out there now. That is now underwater. So how can you help me get around that problem?
Well, I think you're reading a lot into your definition of grandfathering and pre-existing use that isn't there. What it says, and I'm reading it. Grandfathering pre-existing use allows that the use and normal maintenance of any structure or alteration of land within wetland resource areas and their buffers existing at the time of enactment of the State Act or the local bylaw may be continued subject to the following. Existing structures, uses, or alterations of land may not be extended or modified. And we have one proposal in front of you that is neither an extension or a modification. It is exactly a repair of a previously approved structure by this commission. So that it can't be extended or modified. unless there's a finding of the commission that such alteration or modification shall have no adverse impact to the resource area and interest protected by the town of Nantucket Wetlands Protection Bylaw. So,
Bingo.
what,
It does, in fact, interfere with the public use. Our public.
we're conflating things.
Mm-mm.
Okay, if you want to deny the stairs, go ahead. We don't want to do them, okay? We offered that because it was asked for. But the analysis, if you're just doing a repair or replacement, and the Petrol's Landing case hits this dead on, and I know that one because I lost it, okay? Because I made that argument. And, Seth, you can argue all day long, but you're wrong on that, and the case says that there doesn't have to be a structure there, okay? If the structure was gone, we could repair this because it's the pre-existing structure, that bulkhead that's protected in the groins. So I'll just, I know Mark wants to speak to a little bit to the change in resource areas, but be careful where you're going with this. I mean, you'll be dealing with this every single time you are looking at an old order that somebody's coming in here with, every single time. And Ashley talked about the town pier. I mean, how is this different than the town pier?
So, Mr. Bailey, I said it's different because the resource areas haven't changed.
But
And I
they're-
think, hey, wait a second. So, I think we got to watch the back and forth kind of pointing at commissioners here,
I don't need to
and
be
get this
pointing.
on the
I'm sorry.
record. But, I think we see this differently. You obviously want your project approved. Some of us are looking at changes in the resource areas here that are different than the town pier, right? The town pier has been land under the ocean the whole time, as far as I know. Again, I don't have that in front of me. So this is a little different, and I have the exact, wording you just read from your application. And I, when I see uses and/or alterations may not be extended and/or modified, I do see this as an extension of the use, where the groin had previously been on a beach collecting sand for a beach, and now it's almost a breakwater. You're completely rebuilding it in land under the ocean. And I think, as a commission, at this point, we have signed up for these challenging things because we are facing sea level rise and climate change. So it's hard. It's not an easy task that we have in front of us. And I'm sorry that you feel like you're being kind of put through the ringer on this one. But it's important that we have these conversations.
I'll let Mr. Ritz speak to the change.
I would like to speak to a few things initially. First of all, just to clarify, a breakwater is a shore parallel structure designed to break wave energy and allow sediment to accumulate behind it. A bulkhead is a shore parallel structure designed to protect a shoreline from direct wave energy impact. Groins are specifically constructed on beaches, intertidal areas, and out into the water for the express purpose of trapping sediment transported primarily by longshore currents, moving crosswise along the shoreline to trap sediment either from either direction, sometimes one, sometimes both, as in this case where we have bidirectional sediment transport. But the purpose of a groin as a coastal structure is to extend out into an area of water and to trap sediment moving along the shore to build a beach, a wider beach out in front of a set of structures. At the last meeting, I presented a series of Nantucket GIS aerial photographs going back to, what was it, 07, I think?
2003.
03, I'm sorry. It was about roughly a 21 year stretch of photos. And in those photos, a beach of variable width is visible in many of those photos in front of the bulkhead and around both groins. Now that beach, because of storm activity, because of different conditions, it was of different widths. Sometimes it extended out beyond the groins. Sometimes it was almost not present. But there has been a beach that comes and grows and shrinks in front of that bulkhead and around those groins. Groins are, again, specifically designed to extend into intertidal areas to trap sediment. If you have a large storm event like Henry in 2021, I think it was roughly August, a tremendous amount of sand was removed from the nearshore system in front of the bulkhead and groins. About 6 months after that, our eastern groin was destroyed by the January storm. Typical longshore transport that brings sediment back in, it takes some time to do. It takes time for that beach to rebuild, for those groins to fill to what is called entrapment capacity, the maximum amount of sediment that they can store. If you go to parts of Hallowell where there are groin fields, literally every property has 1 or 2 groins. After a storm, those groins are more exposed. Given some time, sand comes back in and many of those groins are almost completely buried. That's how groins function along the shoreline. Our groin was damaged soon after Henry, so we had a depleted beach. The groin was not present after January, and the area has not been accumulating sediment as the system is designed. I did a wading survey earlier this season that showed that around the western groin, that beach is already starting to build out. Where initially, when we first came in with this application earlier in the year, we had much greater water depths around that western groin. Now they are at or near 0 and sand is starting to build out around that groin. If the eastern groin were in place doing its job as designed, sand would be accumulating there and we wouldn't be talking necessarily about a current change in resource area. The whole resource area dynamic is exactly that. It's dynamic there. The beach comes and goes. The groins are supposed to help trap sand in front of that bulkhead. Typically, a bulkhead doesn't trap sediment. It basically stops direct impact wave energy, and the groins are specifically there as part of the system to help accumulate sediment on either side of the groins as well as in between in front of the bulkhead, making a bigger, wider beach, which was seen in many of those photos, which did provide better access, perhaps, ankle wading along the beach, but there was visible beach in multiple photos in that set. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you. And I apologize for my misuse of breakwater. All right, any other questions, comments from commissioners?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of this debate happened before my time on the commission, and my question was going to be about the groins that was just answered about trapping sediment. And it seems to me, with the debate of climate change, et cetera, that we also, as commissioners, could be looking to solutions. So I would be in favor of it. So I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Do you wish to speak? Go ahead,
Yes.
Joe.
Yeah, I've read through a lot of paperwork and heard a lot of discussion. The groin needs to be repaired. There may be a bunch of other issues resolving or revolving around that, but I think the bottom line is repair the groin.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? All right. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close this one?
Yes, you have all of the required.
Unless anybody wants to discuss further the kind of changing resource areas and use.
Not me.
Okay. Would you guys like to close?
Yes.
I'll make that motion, Madam
All
Chair.
right, motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you. I know it's a hard issue.
Thank you. So that moves us on to NBB Fuels LLC at 611 and 12 New Whale Street. And we have Katie Barnacle listed. I'm not sure who's presenting this one.
So where is?
Oh, Mr. Frederick. So we have to use this mic. Apparently that one's not working. Mine's, the Wi-Fi might be slow.
Good evening. So Katie, I think they were thinking they could zoom in, so I apologize. So I'll do the best I can to kind of go over what we're proposing here.
Can you just state your full name
I'm
for
sorry.
us?
It's Dave Fredericks. I'm with Harbor Fuel. Ultimately, although we're not the listed owner of the real estate, we would be the ultimate user of the outcome of the fuel. And with me is Bill O'Brien, who is with New England Development. And similarly, we're not the owner. Katie would have been representing the owner, but obviously the boat basin is the beneficiary of the change. So, as everyone knows, this has been going on the island since somewhere started in the 30s, but the tank farm grew into whatever it was throughout the 60s. And it really started to become an issue in the late 80s when Nantucket Electric Company went towards a submarine cable to close the power plant, reduce the amount of oil that was stored downtown. There had been a 20 or 30 year discussion across the island about relocating the tank farm. That's been completed. We went through a process with the Board of Selectmen and eliminated the licenses that are downtown, with the exception of 3 tanks that are there today on the property. That license ends at the end of this year. And we, this past May, licensed 2 10,000-gallon tanks. These are double-walled, self-sustained systems that are meant to supply the marina and the harborfront area the fuel needed to support all the activities that are in the harbor. There was a fair amount of discussion, again, with the groups back at the level of the board, selectmen, and the fire department, really focusing on the right location to put those. Given the current site, there was a determination that this was the best location for the things that we had to consider, such as, access for a vehicle, a distance from the harbor, current uses and not impacting other properties. And so what you have before you is a solution that we think is fair. It really sets these 2 tanks without changing elevation. It tries to reuse as much of the dike walls as possible. It is important to point out that the dike walls are really there to protect against flooding. The tanks themselves are standalone double-walled systems, so they have their own system for protecting against spills. The purpose of the dike staying in place is to make sure that in the event of flooding, which is obviously going on, that the tanks themselves are free or from any risk of being damaged by anything that might be in those flooded waters. We are slightly modifying what's in front of you, and we're doing it on the fly. We are having a discussion with our abutter, who is National Grid, about some private easement issues related to some of the piping. So we are restricting what we're presenting to you today to be just the piping that exists on the property that houses the 2 tanks and shows as the access road to those 2 tanks. And the other piping is not part of any conversation at this point. It's not something that needs to be modified, so we're dropping it from any discussion in the application. So from there, we can answer questions.
All right. Thank you. Ian, do you have a question,
I
comment?
do. So, Dave, it's nice to see you again.
Same here. How you been?
Good, thank you. So, is the protective wall something we can discuss?
Yes.
So, what would the estimate be for extreme storm surge there? And would the walls be higher than the extreme storm surge, would be my question.
So, it's the word extreme. I believe we look at a 50-year floodplain, and it's at 4.5 feet above existing, and the walls there are presently 5. We did not go beyond that. So, again, that was as far out as we looked at the particular time. And to the best of our knowledge, there's not been any flood water, and I understand that it's all evolving, greater than a little over 4 feet in that area, given previous history.
So pretty close to the overtopping.
Yes, we would be close to. Right now, I think these walls are 5 feet and change, so it's 5'6" from existing grade. So we would be within a foot of something being to go over the top.
So I guess my question is, would it be worthwhile adding a couple of feet? And
we were trying to the best of our ability to use the existing dike walls that were there and limit the amount of construction. I don't think we're opposed to, if someone said that they would like to see us, be 18 inches over that mark that the Army Corps is showing, I don't think that would be a major issue for us.
Well, I don't want to appear to be arbitrary anyway, but I would have thought that would be a great idea if it's feasible. Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Linda?
I think it's a net gain because you're removing 3 50-plus-year-old tanks and putting 2 sort of rectangular, low-profile,
Yeah,
double line,
it's
triple line, current tanks.
the drawing doesn't do it well. If we're all standing down there thinking it can remember what was down there, we've cleared
I grew up
out,
with it.
7 very difficult old tanks that, like I said, go back to the 30s. And we'll get rid of the last 3 once these are in service. And what we're putting in place is not just low profile. It's about the size of a pickup truck. It's not all of that even. It's very technologically and the best system that we could find. And so there are a lot of people in, as I think about the elevation, there's a lot of people who would not have bothered to protect the tanks right now. And so we tried, if you out to any other marina, you would not see them protected. We had the opportunity with the existing elevation. And I can't guarantee that we would take that back, but I don't think we're opposed to looking at elevation a little further, to be candid.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? All right, seeing not, Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close?
All good.
Dave, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is
I'll
there a
make that motion.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Sure.
Seconded by Ian.
I think Joe beat me.
No, I heard you first, but I'll give it to Joe then. So all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Have a great night, guys.
Thank you, you too. That moves us on to Kane at 12 Pond Road, and I believe we have Brian Madden here to represent this.
Thank you very much. Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants. Good to see everyone. The proposed project involves a proposed addition, decking, garage, studio, driveway, utilities, and landscaping. If you remember, for some of the older commission members, we had filed a notice of intent for this project, and the proposed addition was partially located within the 50-foot buffer zone to the vegetated wetland that's in the back of the property. There was some architectural HDC issues to overcome, and the architect was able to revise the project to keep that addition outside the 50-foot buffer zone. So that addition will be situated on a shallow crawl space foundation. The bottom of the footing is elevated above high groundwater. So we're not intruding into high groundwater, and there's not going to be a need for dewatering, but we are within that 2-foot separation. The connector between the existing house and the proposed addition is basically a floating connector. There's no structural on the ground component. Water will be allowed to freely flow underneath it. More or less, it's cantilevered over. And it does overlap partially in the 50-foot buffer zone where the existing deck and stoop entrance are, but there's no expansion in that location. The deck on the south side of the building, the existing dwelling, is proposed to be minimally expanded away from the resource area, basically to align with that new addition. And if you look at the plans, I think that makes sense of how that matches up. It's not overly expansive. It's just aligning to meet up with that addition for access and egress purposes. The garage studio in the front of the property is located within the outer 100-foot buffer zone. The driveway, pervious driveway off of Meadowview Drive can be reconfigured and upgraded to a loop layout. We are abandoning the existing septic system here and tying into sewer. The septic system will be abandoned in compliance with Title V and Board of Health requirements, but the upgrade will result in an improvement over existing conditions. Runoff from the proposed structures are going to subsurface infiltration systems, as shown on the plans. And as mitigation, the applicant is proposing to remove the 45 square foot shed that's within the 25-foot buffer zone and revegetate the surrounding area and existing lawn areas. That restoration area totals 785 square feet. And what we're proposing to plant is arrowwood, high bush blueberry, sweet pepper bush shrubs to expand that, restore the 25-foot buffer zone and expand that buffer between the 25 and 50-foot to provide an overall long-term improvement over existing conditions. And we've requested a waiver for that work. Turn over to questions.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Linda?
I think, given the comments that we made the last time, I think, for me anyway, I think you've dealt with the issue of that connector, which I think was the biggest problem, was that connector. And we're getting rid of that shed and reconfiguring that driveway. So I think I'm satisfied now, because I think the big issue was the foundation, I think going a full foundation in that connector. And so I'm satisfied with the way you've dealt with it.
Thank you. Thank you. All credit to the architect behind me.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? You know, Brian, I know it's in the write-up, but what is the structural area proposed within the 50?
So the deck expansion is 136 square feet. The overlap within the connector is 42 square feet. So if you're just looking at the new structural alignment for the deck is going to be elevated on sonotubes. The water's going to be allowed to naturally infiltrate underneath. And we did the expanded the restoration area basically right up to the edge of it and allowed for a minimal walkway around it. I think it amounts to a little bit greater than 5-to-1 mitigation ratio.
Thank you. That's what I was just trying to parse out, like 178 square feet versus 785.
Yeah, I think that's in the neighborhood of 4.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right. No further questions or comments from commissioners? Jeff?
Elegant
Oh.
building, and I'm really pleased that you came back with these modifications. Thank you.
And it got approved at HGC. I didn't mention that. So
That's a big
that's what we were waiting on.
Big step forward.
Yeah.
So Jeff, do we have everything we'd need to close? I'm assuming you'd like to close. Mr. Topham, would you like to close?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
All right. Motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Yes.
Seconded by Ian. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, it's good to see you, Joe.
All right.
Yes, Joe. Come on back.
All right, so that moves us on to the Grayland Group LLC at 7 Pond Road. And I believe we have, is it still Chloe Coggins? Okay, Chloe Coggins representing.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm not Paul Santos. I am Chloe Coggins with Nantucket Surveyors, and on behalf of the applicant, the Grayland Group LLC, this application is for the proposed construction of an addition, screen porch, outdoor shower, patio, and relocation of an existing shed within the buffer zone. If you guys look at your plans, you can see it's pretty straightforward. The addition is just right in between the garage and the dwelling. The screen porch is within the footprint of the deck. And then same with the proposed patio, that's within the footprint of the deck porch. The shed, the owners just bought this property and they have agreed to relocate the shed outside of, so it's not within the 50-foot no build anymore, as well as that patio. You can see that there's an existing patio that goes from the house to the shed. So basically, they're just gonna get rid of all that within the 50-foot. And yeah, that's that.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Seth.
I guess, do we need an updated plan that shows the shed being removed?
I think we could probably condition that that plan comes in, and that the, right, Jeff, or do you want them to submit the plan?
So I believe in the project overview, if you call for the removal of the shed, they'd be obligated to do that work, so they wouldn't be able to gain a certificate of compliance unless that shed is removed.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions or comments? Mike?
Madam Chair, the shed's being, I'm just unclear, the shed's being removed or relocated?
Relocated, removed out of the 50, or yeah.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Seth, yep.
in that case, I mean, I think if it's gonna be between the 50 and the 100-foot, we would still need at some point the plan showing where it's gonna be.
Yes.
But I'm fine with it coming in later, but we do need that plan at some point.
Yeah, so I guess we could condition that that plan is submitted.
Yeah, you could certainly include that as a condition, or, I mean, you could ask Chloe, do you know where they're relocating it to?
No.
Or the other option would be that you could simply condition that it's relocated to an area outside of jurisdiction, and then if they wanted to change that location, they'd have to come back with a minor mod.
Thank you.
Let's do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, so Jeff, do we have everything we'd need to close?
Yes.
Chloe, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Hildebrand at 60 Crooked Lane, also represented by Chloe Coggins.
I'm back. Okay, so Chloe Coggins, Nantucket Surveyors, on behalf of the applicant, Ellen Hildebrand. This application is for the proposed construction of a porch, pergola, and demolition of the second floor, which will include construction of a new roof within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. This one's also pretty straightforward. The pergola, as you can see, is going to go within or on top of an existing deck. And then somewhat close to it, we have a proposed porch within the footprint of some like a small deck and then kind of a footpath down there. And then the proposed second story renovation is pretty straightforward. That outline isn't going to change. I do want to mention that on this plan, there's parts of this plan that are not in red, but they still say proposed fence, proposed pool, proposed spa, proposed shed. This was from a previously submitted notice of intent. Those were all built, constructed. We have an order of conditions. It's expired, but it just hasn't been closed out yet. So that will happen. So other than that, yeah, that is that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Mark?
Do you have a certificate of compliance for that order?
For the previous one?
Yeah.
No, we don't. We haven't closed that one out yet.
Will you be applying for it?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I have a question. I think that's for Jeff, and I missed this the last time this property came up. Is this property pre-78? I was just surprised, and maybe the wetland lines came in later, because I used to work here before it was Ellen's, that the cattle grates, that metal grate was within the 25.
They're still there.
Yeah.
So we have looked at that and predated that, unfortunately. It is in longer than what we have known about, and so we can't really take enforcement on those
Okay.
cattle grates.
Okay.
Question for you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
In light of that, I know There's a curative statute in the bylaw that if it's more than 6 years, depending on building permits, more than 10 years, is the same thing existing in the Concom? That they can't come after them if it's beyond so many years?
For us, it's 7.
7, okay.
Any other questions or comments?
You want to know how old the house is?
You can look it up.
Older than 7.
1950, but that's only part of it. The
So-
rest of it is all much recent, more recent.
We have plans that are older than 7 that show those cattle grades
Yeah,
being in
They've
place.
been
there
way
for
longer than
quite some
7,
time.
because I used to work there
Oh,
like
yeah.
15 years ago.
No,
So
wait.
just a curiosity question.
It's actually part of it's 1900, but the rest is after that.
So Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes, you do.
Chloe, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She's much faster than Paul. I'm just gonna say that on the record.
So that moves us on to amended orders of conditions. We have 34 Easton Realty Trust at 34 Easton Street, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and like everyone else says, nice to see everybody. I'm before you tonight for the second hearing on this amended order of conditions, and we filed revised plans in response to the comments at the first hearing, where we have adjusted or shifted the house back outside of the 50-foot buffer zone, as had been discussed. I also updated the plan to, so shown on the plan in red is the proposed footprint of the house. And I also added in grayscale the approved footprint so that you could see what previously existed on the site, what was previously approved in grayscale, and then what is proposed in red. And again, there's we're shifting the house back about 14 feet from where it existed, getting it outside of that zone completely. We are within land subject to coastal storm flowage. We're also, as with the original application, the project overall, I believe, represents a significant improvement from existing conditions because the entire new structure will be compliant with construction in the flood zone, so that versus the previous, that was that white block masonry building you may have been familiar with. And now we'll be able to allow floodwaters under the entirety of this structure. So I do believe it's an improvement.
Thank you, Art, and thank you for shifting that out of the 50. Any questions or comments from commissioners? No, looks like no. Jeff, do we have everything we'd need to issue the amended order? Art, I'm assuming you'd like us to issue?
Yes, please, or close.
Make that motion.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So real quickly, because this is now in person, we don't have to do digital signatures. I won't start passing signature pages for things that we've approved around. So please just sign it and then they'll be done. You won't have to get it in your email.
And Mike, we can just leave the pile by you and at the end, give them all back to Jeff.
Okay.
Just as I learned how to do the online signature.
Don't worry,
It took me like
we'll go
a
back.
whole year to do that.
See how many pens I have in here.
I have lots of extra pens if
I
people
have
need them.
Pens. We
Or
have
people
pens.
can share.
We live with pens.
Yeah.
I don't live with pencils.
I almost forgot. And then
I remembered this afternoon and then I unfortunately forgot before this one, so good catch, Jeff.
all a little rusty of this in person.
Well, we messed that up last summer, so today I was literally like, remember.
I forgot.
I forgot anyway. All right, so while we're signing, that moves us on to minor modifications. We have 14 North Road LLC at 14 North Road, and this is represented by Brian Madden.
Hello again, Brian Madden from LEC representing the applicant. The minor modification request is simply some dry laid stone patio reconfiguration outside the 25-foot buffer zone and a relocation of a dry well. And that's it.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Jeff, do we have everything we need to issue the minor mod?
Yes, you do.
Is there a motion to issue the minor mod? Motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know. And I have your names alphabetically imprinted in my mind. Jeff, on an earlier agenda, we had a Millbrook Road minor mod, and I'm not seeing it on this printed one.
So again, in ring rust of going to in person, when we use our new agendas, I forgot we had put on the meeting posting the Larrabee one for 9 Millbrook, so we need to hear it, but it just missed the agenda that was there. But it's posted, so we're okay.
Right, it was on the original one. Okay, so
That's my fault. Lisa's away, so this is what happens when I start doing these things again.
all right. We're gonna go to it now. It's next. Yeah, so we have Larrabee at 9 Millbrook Road, represented by David Haynes.
Good evening again. This is a minor mod request to show a shifted location of the driveway over in that, it's greater than 25 feet from the wetland. The work that has been done recently, so far, we have removed the loam pile. There was a loam pile that was by mistake put in a wetland area. We removed that and restored that. We did that last year and seeded it, and it's come in well. I have submitted photographs of that area. And then we recently removed the existing driveway, portions of the existing driveway that were within, we think it was in a wetland area. It was right along the edge of the wetland. So we have restored that wetland area and seeded it. It has not come up yet, but it will. We will continue to monitor that. The silt fence has been all restored. It was flapping in the breeze a bit out there. It's been towed in. Some of the silt fence, which was right along the 100-foot buffer zone in a field, was removed. So it was just basically to establish a limit of work. The only other work that is left to be done is to spread out the soil pile that is there. One of the problems is he doesn't have access without the previous driveway, and he couldn't get equipment in there. And so now he's got the ability to get in there, and he will start spreading that loam out. The well still has to be removed, and a new well has to be put in, and that's the only work in the inside of the buffer zone. The house is outside of the buffer zone. The septic system is all outside of the buffer zone. Work is progressing, and as soon as he gets better access into the site, the loam pile will be spread out and that area will be stabilized.
Thank you, David. Any questions or comments from commissioners? I know this site really concerns me, I have to admit. That driveway was being traveled on, and the wetland restoration started after a major rainstorm where there was a tremendous amount of runoff. So I'm a little concerned about the proximity of this driveway to the wetland, and I'm honestly hoping for more detail on the edging of that driveway so that we don't further have runoff going to that wetland, because I believe originally the driveway was proposed on the complete opposite side, was kind of the selling point to us.
Yeah, when they put that driveway in, the runoff from across, there's a little cul-de-sac across the street that the water was coming down and it ran into that area. When we regraded this area and did the wetland replication, we also constructed a berm right there, and he is in the process of planting that with bayberry, so it'll be a shrub and a berm area that will prevent a runoff from going into that area. The location of the new driveway was selected to be outside of the runoff area from the road across the street to eliminate that. So it would not be the same situation. It was collecting all the water. Well, you all know what Millbrook Road looks like when it rains. But it was coming across from, I believe that's Deer Run or whatever cul-de-sac in there. It's a paved cul-de-sac coming down to two leaching catch basins that are completely, that don't seem to be functioning, and the water just runs across, out into Millbrook Road. And when that driveway was put in, it cut down and it would allowed it to run down there, and it was a problem. So that area, the whole driveway in that area has been loamed and seeded and mulched. The silt fence is in good condition, and the new driveway location was set to avoid being in that situation where the water would come off the Millbrook Road.
Okay. I just know it's pretty dynamic there. I think the length of time it took to restore that wetland was not good. Yeah. But I'll give it to other commissioners if you have questions or comments. If not, Jeff, do we have everything we need to issue the minor mod?
You do. I did send around, I thought Lisa had put it in the packet and I missed it, but I did send around the site photographs that David provided. I just emailed them again in
Yeah,
case
those are
people
these things.
didn't get a chance to see them.
Thank
But I would tend to agree, the site has had a lot of issues with silt fencing and maintenance on that silt fencing. So I do agree that it's a critical component of the project.
Especially when we kind of gave them a pass to put that house down before issues were resolved. And then they kept working and didn't resolve the issues. So, and I know it's not you, David, doing that work, but you're who they picked to represent them.
I'm standing here.
Yes. All right, so Jeff, we have everything we need to close. Is there
Yes.
a motion to issue the minor mod?
So moved.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Seth. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Hopefully I won't see you again on this one.
Not until a certificate of compliance.
All right, that moves us to certificates of compliance. We have Gallagher and Aguirre at 4 Pond Road. Jeff, are
Yes.
you taking this one?
Yeah, Paul. Paul asked if I could cover for him because I'm just going to sell him out. Paul forgot that it was an in-person meeting.
And I reminded him yesterday.
Oh, and Chloe reminded him, and I reminded him, and that's just Paul. So this was a project that was for a sewer connection.
Draft orders.
Sorry, I just passed around draft orders for folks. Just take a copy and keep them. So this was for the construction of a garage, connection to the sewer, abandoning the septic system, and then just some site work related to that. And then they had a couple minor modifications for some work on the one-story garage and then the irrigation well. The only change that I think we still felt that it was in substantial compliance when we got to the end of the project, someone's making sure, is the shed ended up getting a little bit smaller on the final plan from what was originally proposed. So I think we kind of agreed that it was substantially compliant still from our site inspection. And we would recommend that this could be, the certificate of compliance for this project could be issued.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions for Jeff? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to issue the cert? Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And we just passed around the draft orders for tonight. And we will begin going through these. So Eric continued for Heritage. Yep, so we're gonna start at Coburn at 5 High Brush Path.
So I just kind of had our standard set of conditions on this.
Just since it was that came up in conversation many times, should we identify the upgrade of the existing septic system to be IA?
Sure, so why don't we put it in the
Yeah.
permit overview? We'll just put, this order permits the upgrade of an existing septic system to an IA septic system.
Any other thoughts on this order? Questions, comments? On high brush, yes.
Be a motion to issue.
A motion
As
to
amended.
issue as amended. Okay, so Linda made a motion to issue as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Yeah, that moves us on to NBB Fuels LLC at 6, 11, and 12 New Whale Street.
Yeah, I just had kind of our fill conditions for this one. I didn't really have anything else too extreme.
Jeff, any questions or comments on this order?
Only in as much as that when we were talking to Dave Fredericks, he said he would take into account raising the protective wall. Is that something we can put in as a suggestion?
I think he thought he would consider it.
Yeah. You'd like, sorry, Linda, what did you say?
Oh, I didn't want to make it a condition, but you can say that there was discussion about it and they,
I said add it
Good.
as a suggestion.
yeah.
Question, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Is that?
Question for you, actually. So as our CRAC representative, so the CRAC took a position saying that we should adopt specific sea level rise models. I think you said the high. So can we just essentially use that same language to say the height of the protective wall should meet the requirements of the sea level rise scenario?
You didn't take the words out of my mouth, and I wish you had.
And Mark, did you put your hand up on this one? No.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great suggestion.
Any other thoughts on this order? Questions, comments?
I did have one comment. It seemed awfully short for so important a project.
Hey, the tanks are gone. They're going.
Well, that's gonna come back in front of us again.
Yes.
For
I
remediation.
think we
I
need
know.
a target date for
It's a
that.
brownfield down there.
So I have put a new finding in, kind of based upon the discussion. So this is just suggestion, so there'd be additional finding number 2, and it would just read, the commission finds that the existing dike wall should be considered to be improved to take into account sea level rise conditions as recommended by the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee.
Keep in mind, on a legal document, you can't defer action to another board.
Well,
So
there's-
should we be a little bit more specific about it, or?
No, he's referencing a specific plan.
But
Which-
we're not requiring them, it's
Yeah.
a consideration.
Okay.
Question,
Yes.
is there an expected lifespan of these tanks or anything about that in the project? Because those sea level rise analyses change as you go farther in time. So are we talking about using the high scenario for 2030, 2050, 2100?
I would say our permit is 3 years, and if it needs to change beyond there, they'll be back in front of us.
Okay.
Hopefully it doesn't change that fast.
I'll make that motion with that amendment.
Okay, so Linda made the motion to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Anybody?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to the Grayland Group. Did we not have Kane on here?
No, I didn't draft orders yet, so we'll have to discuss Lehrman and Kane, but we can finish these ones first. Oh, I am totally failing on my job here to pass
I
these
forgot
around.
to pass them around.
All right, here's Coburn.
So we're gonna take these and go back to comments on those other?
Yes, it sounds like we'll take what we have on paper and then
So what, Seven
comment.
Pond next?
Yes, so we are gonna go to the Grayland Group LLC at 7 Pond Road. While we're doing this, not to confuse anybody, but the signature pages are going around for Coburn and NBB Fuels.
I'm just signing and going that way.
Yes, just sign and pass, and Mike's
That sign is
piling.
gonna go on over there.
Yeah.
I will collect them all. So I did have an addition to Coburn from our, not Coburn, oh my goodness.
Grayland
From the
Group.
Grayland Group. Maybe. Actually, maybe I did not.
The shed? Shed should be located outside the,
Yes, so I added an additional condition number 20 that reads, "The shed shall be relocated to an area outside of the commission's jurisdiction. Should the applicant choose to place it within the commission's jurisdiction, the applicant shall file a minor modification."
Thank you, Jeff.
I'll make that motion to issue with that condition.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Hildebrand at 60 Crooked Lane.
Again, I felt like this one was just kind of our standard condition set.
Yeah.
The pool and things are all conditioned under that previous order.
Previous order.
All right. Any questions or comments about the order?
I'll make a motion to approve, issue.
All right, Linda made a motion to approve as drafted. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And now we're just gonna go back on the list for drafts that we don't have drafted tonight. I guess we'll start with Lehrman Dynasty Trust at 18 Washing Pond Road. Just to give Jeff a little direction.
Yes, please.
Is that something we should figure out how many are voting in favor of it, so he just drafts it once?
We could do it that way, or I know Jeff has kindly drafted approval and denials before for the commission to look through.
It just seems like it's a lot of wasted time if we know where everybody's going at this point, if that cuts out having to do both.
So there's also the complication of whether, well, we were given two proposals, one with stairs, one without, depending on how we ruled. So if we ruled for it, then would we incorporate the stairs into the draft order? I guess would be a question for Jeff. And then if we're opposing it, are we opposing it on the grounds that the conditions have changed? So it's now land under the ocean?
Jeff?
All right, so not to hop in. So I think you really just have kind of two tracks. They each have a couple questions that need to be answered. So I think Ian is right. I think if there's a positive order getting drafted, the decision that needs to be made is whether or not stairs or no stairs on that positive plan, and then any other conditions that people want to see as far as, some sort of monitoring or anything goes on a positive order. If the majority of the board prefers a negative order, then obviously a little bit of discussion on why it's being denied and essentially kind of putting together the findings for what that would be for the grounds for denial. I know we've talked about this before, but as a reminder, we kind of do have to make at least an attempt to permit something. It's kind of the directive of the board to try to see if you can condition something to meet performance standards before you just say no. So going through that exercise, you're going to have to make those findings, whether or not you feel it's pre-existing, and if you don't then why you do not. If you don't feel it meets performance standards, why you don't think it does. Obviously, we closed it tonight, so we have a meeting in 2 weeks, so you can obviously review, and if people have any other additional thoughts for either order at the next time, we could certainly add it on the fly, but and have at least a skeleton in place. But I think those are the two directions that I would probably recommend sorting out the positive or negative first, and then the choices for either one of those secondarily.
Do you want to take a sense of the board so we know where we are?
Yeah, we can go around. Mark?
I just had a question. Jeff, remind me of their condition of putting in stairs. What was, they added something else with that. What was, they said they'll put in stairs, but.
They didn't want to.
Only if we approve the
Only
project.
if we approved.
If
They
it's
didn't
a
want to put the
denial.
stairs
Well, they
in.
didn't put in stairs that we all liked.
Well,
No, they didn't want to put them in at all.
so I'll clarify. Their comment was that they would put in stairs if required by the commission, but they preferred to not have the stairs.
So if this were to go to appeal in some way, the plan without the stairs is,
Gotcha.
the plan that they would be essentially wanting presented there. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there is a third piece. If we do decide to issue a positive order that also includes a stair set, we'll also need to overcome the fact in the pre-existing conditions to show that that stair set does not adversely impact the resources protected in the bylaw.
Thank you for that reminder, Seth. Are there any questions about this process? Anybody?
I was wavering on the project, but I felt the stairs were very important for public access along the beach, and they argued they couldn't do it because of the property line on the east side was too close to where that, not a revetment, what's it called?
The gabions.
Gabion?
Mhm.
Gabion?
Yeah.
Well, the gabion was, and I was sorry they couldn't do that, but I think it's the only way we can get public access to be in front of that, up on top of their bulkhead. So I felt kind of a rock and a hard place because I wanted to have the public be able to walk along there, but they didn't seem to want to do the reasonable stairs. They wanted to put the stairs out in the water, and that was sort of defeats the purpose of stairs, in my book. So that's my
Question?
25 cents.
Madam Chair,
Thank you, Mark. Yes, Linda?
is that stairs vis-à-vis our jurisdiction for fishing, fouling, et cetera, or is that stairs to allow Chapter 91 access? Because if it's that, I can't vote in favor of that.
It's for
Just for
our
our
ability
fishing,
to
fouling,
recreate.
recreate.
Yeah,
Okay.
on a
As long as it's
beach.
that specific.
Mhm.
No Chapter 91 in my book.
Okay.
It's our own bylaw.
Right, to provide the ability to
Fishing,
recreate and
fouling,
pass.
recreate, pass.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments about this one?
I need some help on the land under the ocean question from people who know more about than I do. Where is that coming from? I mean, I read our bylaw, it's pretty clear on land under the ocean, but how does that apply to this project? Anybody have any thoughts on that? It's now under the ocean.
It could come back. That's the other problem. If it accretes because the grinds and everything had been repaired and it starts to accrete again like it had for so many years, then it's not land under the ocean anymore. So that's where I'm
Well,
like, whoa.
I have a question, though. The mean high water line isn't arbitrary and shifting in that way with the beach building back up, correct? That's set, so.
Right, and also for years, if you look at the picture, it's been clearly underwater for years. So there's very little beach accretion on the eastern side.
And if I may, we have a reference to a court case by Mr. Turcotte at last hearing showing that the court found that the mean high water would be where it would be without the bulkhead in place. So that is a concern as well. If you take the applicant's point that the beach is building back up or will build back up if the eastern groin is replaced, it will be still below the mean high water mark, but it will likely be not in the water. It will likely be in the intertidal zone. So there will be some periods of the day when there will be sand under that stair set. If you accept in theory that what the purpose of the groin to do will actually happen.
Thank you for that, Seth. Jeff?
Sorry, I just wanted to hopefully try to answer Mark's question a bit. So mean high water is it's a set elevation. So if it's around the island and it's set at, like elevation 3 or elevation, 1.5 or wherever it is, obviously as the beach goes up and down and sand accretes and retreats, you'd have to survey it on the day that you wanted to know where it was to know exactly where it was. But mean high water, that elevation does fluctuate. Really fluctuates on a tidal cycle basis. So if you want to go out and determine where it is, if you really want to do it by the letter, you have to do an elevation survey. Or if you really want to go to town, you have to sit there and measure through the tidal cycle and monitor the water itself and then locate it during that time. It's kind of a pain. But it is that set number. So if the beach rebuilds, it would, in theory, move further out. If the beach retreats, it would, in theory, move further in. But it depends on what the sediment is doing and the elevation under the water.
Thank you, Jeff.
That process was done by the representative on June 28th. So we have the lines in the previous plan that show, the western proposed stair at any tidal cycle is above it, and the eastern is below for now, but it may build back up if the groin functions as intended.
So do we want to go around positive and negative and kind of help Jeff out in that way? And I guess whether you're for those stairs as well, because there's a component of the stairs that are up for debate.
So, Madam Chair, just a question. Forgive me for not knowing the process that well, but so we're just going around now to
Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes with more complicated issues when the board might be split, Jeff will sometimes write a positive order and a negative order that we discuss and then kind of approve at the next meeting. And we're just helping him maybe only need to write one of those orders versus both. And if we can give him that sense now, it would help. Yeah.
It saves me a lot of time to only have to write one. Just gonna be selfish in that.
In the right frame of mind.
It's not a frame of mind. It's just a matter of, time to do it. So.
Well, I guess I can start. I, have gone back and forth on this project. I think where I sit tonight would be a denial, because I do think these shifting resource areas are important to look at. And if we, need to go in front of a judge to determine that, I think it's important steps given the changing dynamics of our coastal zone.
And I completely agree with you. So, and, I think like Mark, I weighing sort of the public access under our bylaw, let alone under Chapter 91. I don't think it's sufficient the way that they came back to us. So I have a clear conscience in denying it for those reasons, Ashley, and I hope that a judge will back us up, because it clearly will be appealed.
Anybody else? I know Linda, you. In favor. Okay.
Positive.
With
in favor.
With stairs or without stairs?
Outstairs.
To be truthful, I could see either way, but I'd say with stairs.
I can go either way with them. I just think if the storm hits them, they're going to be ripped off and thrown down the beach somewhere. Mm-hmm. That is a concern for me, more debris on the beach, especially on the eastern side. And if he doesn't have enough setback on the eastern side to put a set of stairs in that are safe, then we got an issue on the eastern side. So that's why I'm sort of concerned about forcing him into doing it on the eastern side. But if you go up on the west side where there's more room and more beach, you have to jump off the east side. So
Well, again, we're not forcing them. This is the design that they have come up with.
I can go either way on this.
Okay, Joe?
I'd say no to the stairs because they won't be there very long.
Okay, and approval on the project?
Yes.
Mark and Seth? If you need to mull it over, then Jeff can write 2 orders. Sorry, Jeff.
I am in favor of issuing a positive order on this project. I don't think we have overcome the technical criteria in the pre-existing use section. I think that it's unfortunate from a sea level rise and long-term planning perspective, but what our regulations say, I believe, uphold the issuance of a positive order here. I do think we should require the stair set because we do need to maintain lateral access for recreation in both land under the ocean and coastal beach, whatever it becomes, or some combination of both. And I am not concerned about the stairs fligging off or becoming debris because the plan that they have actually submitted, the stair is going to be attached to the groin itself and function as part of that groin. So it will be anchored a lot better than many other stair sets.
Through you, Madam Chairman, I know a lot of the beach stairs are required to be removable now. Would these be removable in the winter, or we just leave them there?
People still need to pass.
Okay.
That's the idea, any day, any tide cycle.
Yeah, from what I saw, it would definitely not be able to be removed. It would be physically connected, so.
Okay. As I say, I can go either way on the stairs. I'm fine.
I've been really wavering on this project, as you can tell from my questions of the applicant. I'm very cognitive of Jeff's comments on our job is trying to find a way to grant a permit. I will be in favor of this permit, but with stairs, only with stairs.
Okay.
I'm reluctant to say no to an applicant who is grandfathering is a tricky one in this case, but I think that I can issue a positive. I can stand by a positive order with access to stairs.
All right, thank you, Mark. So Jeff, I think you're drafting a positive. It sounds like with the stairs.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do think it could be next meeting or this meeting, but I do think we have to have the discussion that I talked about that establishes that those stairs are not adversely impacting the resource area.
I mean, we can have that now.
Yeah.
Jeff can take notes on his computer.
I mean, I think if you look at our performance standards, there is the protected interest of recreation and lateral access. And then if you think about what the stair set is proposed as, especially with the construction being connected to the groin, it's not really posing much more of a impact than there is currently, well, before it was damaged. There is obviously more structure there, so we'll have to decide if that additional structure has any impacts, but it's not significantly more based on how it's proposed to be constructed.
Question about that, through you, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Linda?
Because we had talked about not modifying it, not expanding it. Does this now constitute modification and an expansion?
Yes, and that's
Yeah,
why we
that's
have
what
to
we're
make this
talking about.
finding.
Okay, we have to specifically state that. Because we
It's-
spent so much time with them telling us it's not modifying, it's not expanding, and now we are making them expand it.
Yeah, if
Right,
I
okay.
may, it says cannot be extended or modified unless such extension or modification is permitted by a finding of the commission that such alteration or modification shall have no adverse impact to the resource area. So that's what
Okay.
we're trying to do right now.
Okay.
So that it'll actually enhance the ability of the public to recreate there.
Okay, works for me.
But if people have ideas about how it may cause adverse impacts to our other protected interests, this would be the time to say those as well.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, certainly they alter the dynamic there, but there's a massive bulkhead, gabions, it's like, it's so many things, so I don't know that they make it any worse than
We'll
the
probably see
situation
that
already
too.
is out there.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
Great.
so Jeff, you think you have it?
I think so.
All right, so,
We'll
yes.
see it in 2 weeks.
We'll see it in 2 weeks. And then we have Kane at 12 Pond Road, which it seemed like people, since there weren't many questions, were going a positive direction on.
Seems like an easy one.
Yes.
Easy, but not at the same time.
So I typically, as a rule, I know this is only our second meeting with the new board. I typically don't draft orders for projects that are requesting waivers, just because there's usually a little bit more discussion, and I don't like to pre-assume what the will of the board is going to be on a project where they're requesting waivers. So, well, it turned out there wasn't a lot of discussion in the end on this one. Maybe could have. It's just kind of our policy to not do that unless it's super clear, like a septic upgrade or something that is required from somewhere else. So that's why. But if people are just looking for a positive order, I mean, typical conditions I would include for a project like this, obviously there would be probably some component of monitoring regarding the restoration areas, probably some survivability component to that too, to make sure that it's successful. And then simple things like not keeping construction materials inside the 50-foot setback, our normal conditions for fill, and those kinds of things would probably be in there. So pretty normal set with the monitoring things would be our kind of staff recommendation for that.
Would you have a finding on this one, Jeff, that due to the mitigation of greater than 4-1, construction is permitted in the 50?
Certainly.
Wasn't it 5-1?
It's closer
Didn't you
to
say
4-1.
Well, I'll figure out the exact
Also
number.
removing 41-foot shed.
Yeah, moving the shed, and there's a modification of the
So
driveway too, isn't there?
I'll break it out specifically in a finding if that's what the request is for the ratio and the square footages that are involved.
All right.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, Seth.
So I would request that we put in a finding about the foundationless areaway, indicating that that still is a structure. I mean, I know they're asking for the long-term net benefit waiver there to allow that structure, but I want to make sure that we call out that as a structure for future applications. And then for the new deck, I was hoping we could have, well, the whole deck really, I was hoping we could have a condition that requires appropriate spacing for infiltration of water through that deck.
Yeah, I think he represented that too, but we probably should state that, because they said that that's how they was going to design it, so it can flow freely.
Thank you, Seth. Any other thoughts on Kane 12 Pond Road?
Should I make a motion?
No,
for-
we don't need a motion
Okay.
because it's just
order
going to
conditions.
Jeff to
I'll have that
hopefully
ready
draft.
for the next time too. But that's all very helpful. So thank you.
Okay.
So we have no extensions of orders. This moves us on to other business. So we have first approval of minutes from June 23rd.
So moved.
Motion made by Linda to approve. Is there a second?
Just a procedural question, Madam Chair.
Yep.
Since some of
weren't
us
here.
weren't here for, right, on the commission for,
So you can abstain from the vote.
okay.
I'll make that motion.
A motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Seth. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And so that carries with Commissioner Mazzarelli and Plandowski abstaining.
Now I'll make a motion to approve the,
So the 7/14
Yeah.
was dated incorrectly.
yeah,
It said the 22nd was the date on there. So that's the only thing I saw, but I don't know if,
I'll make that motion with
So,
that change.
Just a second, Linda. You seem to be awfully eager to jump the gun. Terry, thank you as always for your minutes. And on page 5 of 11, I said William Leahy, and you spelt it Lehigh. It's actually Lahey. And I'm sure I was mumbling, so I apologize.
I thought Lehigh was like Leahy.
Yes, Lahey.
Or spell check.
Any
It
other,
agrees with both. Actually, it doesn't help it.
any other amendments for the 7:14 minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve those amendments.
Okay, so Linda made a motion to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. That moves us on to discussion of regulatory update. And I think Jeff got that out yesterday or the day before
So I sent out the Word version.
You can read
Sorry.
the pages 13 to something.
So hopefully everyone can do that. People can send in edits. I think I left this on there because I was more curious if people just wanted to maybe schedule just a separate like workshop just to go through that, so we don't take up time on the regular agenda. And if people were interested in doing that as soon as, the early part of August, or if people would rather wait till summer kind of abates and people can send in written comments and take on like post Labor Day.
That's what I'd rather do.
But it's up to you guys.
I mean, I'd like to give everybody time to read through it, but I also, because this has been years in the making, do want to make sure that we don't delay. So if we're going after Labor Day, like the first available date.
So would you guys like me just to send around the off weeks in September? And then we can try to pick one from there?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Because you're crazed that first week of September.
Yeah.
So unless the gods intervene, I'm going to be having 2 sets of knee surgery. The first knee surgery, I think the 3rd week of September. So
second week.
So I will be, if we don't go to Zoom, back to Zoom, I should be calling in for probably months. So that's a separate issue, but I would rather deal with the regulations before I have the surgery, if that's something that others would consider.
Can we do like the beginning of the second week of September?
Yeah, so maybe Jeff can just send out the available dates and maybe even throw out late August just to see what
Sure.
works for people, and we can.
So we do have the ability to keep in mind, and I apologize for interrupting again. It's a public meeting. I mean, we could certainly post it, and even if we're doing our regular meetings in person, we could certainly do that meeting by Zoom. Governor's order allows for us to do that. So we can be pretty flexible for that kind of meeting, whether it's remote or in person. So hopefully that will resolve some of those issues as well.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, Jeff. That's a good reminder.
Cool.
We'll talk about that again in a little bit.
Yes.
On that point, I'd rather do that workshop meeting in person, but all the other meetings via Zoom. I feel like it's easier to work through regulations when you're together. But on a separate point, it's come to my attention that Arlington has a really good climate change protection language in their regulations. I know we talked about adding some language for resiliency and climate change in ours, but they called out a whole paragraph that relates to every single resource area. And I think we should do the same. So I can send this to Jeff with the appropriate page number for everyone to look at to see if we could include something like that in our update.
Seth, did you say Arlington?
Arlington, Mass.
Are they on the water?
They have
A water.
wetland resource areas just like every other town in the state.
Well, thank you for pointing that out, and I look forward to reviewing some of their.
I think just to add on to that, when I was down in Newport, I think Newport has language about sea level rise down on the water because they've got historic structures down there. I took a course down in Providence at a planning course, and they were trying to deal with, do we surround the really old houses down on the wharf with a moat type of thing, with baffles, with all kinds of stuff? So I know they were inching towards trying to come up with regulations as to sea rise and climate change for their whole wharf area and all the old houses. Because unlike here, they've got really old houses, only a couple hundred feet right off the water.
No, that might be good to look at as well. Any other thoughts, Ian?
Yes, so Jeff, in a preliminary look, there was nothing about compatible beach fill, and I sent you the Florida. We've discussed that about how we really need some regulation.
What was that, Ian? I couldn't hear that.
So Ian had sent in some information, I'll resend it around, about compatible beach fill for nourishment material. I had sent around his stuff, and I apologize because it's been kind of convoluted for changes in times. I'll send it back around, and then I think I'll put a placeholder in for it in the regulations, and then you guys can decide what components need to go in. But we'll get everyone that information.
Thank you, Jeff and Ian. Any other questions, comments about the regulatory update? It's like no. All right, Jeff, so we look forward to hearing those dates from you. That moves us on to enforcement actions, potential enforcement actions.
Sorry, I was away, so I don't really have any for tonight.
Okay,
Isn't that good?
great. So then we have reports, crack,
Nothing to report.
CPC.
Nothing to report, no meetings.
We did have a meeting, you missed it, and everybody sort of forgot it. It was at the loveliest building on Nantucket. It was our annual meeting, and we had presentations by 3 of the recipients of things, but nothing else really transpired.
Okay. NP and EDC.
Yes, we had a meeting on July 18th. It was via Zoom. We just got the word that we could still have it via Zoom a few hours before the meeting started, so that worked out. They accepted me formally as a member from the Conservation Commission. Thank you again, everyone, for your vote to send me. They also approved, or they voted to accept Christy Ferrantella as a new at-large member. And there was a pretty significant discussion of how to recognize Jack Gardner. And then there was discussion of 2 federal grants. One is to extend a bike path or a multi-use path from Pulpus Road eventually to Wawinick Gatehouse to service Nantucket National Wildlife Refuge. But the first phase would be from Pulpus to Pocomo. And we issued a letter of support for that grant process. And then the second was to support a grant for what's called Safe Streets for All, which is a feasibility study about how to improve traffic safety in the downtown area. And also there was some discussion about Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee having just recently been reinstated. So they're going to get their work back up considering those issues. I think 2 of the members are in the room, Mr. Golding and Mr. Turcott. And so we'll see what they have to say about that.
Thank you, Seth. That moves us on to commissioners' comments. Linda?
Another beautifully run meeting, Madam Chairman. It doesn't matter if we're on Zoom or in person.
Oh, thank you. Mark?
I think we need to talk about the Zoom meeting versus in-person meetings. I don't know where we all stand on that, but I think we should have a conversation about that. We have the governor allowed us to meet, till how long was it?
June 23.
March 31st, I think.
March 31st, 23.
March 23. So we have that option of Zoom meetings versus in person. I don't much care for hybrid meetings. I think they confuse the issues too much. You don't know. I think it's troubling to me to do hybrid, but I'm happy with Zoom. I don't mind the in person. I think we got better attendance in Zoom actually.
Yeah.
from the various public as well as the applicants and surveyors, engineers. So I could be happy with a hybrid. My first choice probably would be a hybrid. I mean, it would be Zoom, sorry, would be Zoom.
Thank you, Mark, for bringing us up. I know I've stated multiple times, very, very, very against hybrid. But I am happy to be via Zoom. I do think it's easier for our project representatives to present that way. But I do understand, like Seth said, some meetings might be more appropriate in person. Like, it's nice to actually be with everybody. But I do think Zoom is easier for a number of reasons.
I agree with Seth as well. If we're going to do the regulations, that should be a public hearing.
I'll have you on
In
camera
person.
this time?
No, you'll be looking at my roof. My post and beam, my lovely
It's
post and
Supposed to be
beam.
on camera, I understand.
No,
I think if we're going back to Zoom, we should all agree to be visible on the camera, just because there has been public comment about that, and I do think that's part of it, even if we don't want to be on camera.
yeah, my blue hand comes up when
Yeah,
piped in the
not hand.
house. The winter was
So
blue.
as a teacher who had classes over Zoom, if you couldn't see that student's face, you didn't know if they were even in the room listening. So I think the public probably feels a similar way, which is why the cameras are a nice thing. I know.
I've made it 2.5 years without it.
Yes. All right, anybody else, Zoom or in person?
I'm specifically, I would prefer Zoom, and I agree with Seth with actually discussing the regulations. I think it'd be very helpful to be sitting around the table, but otherwise, I think Zoom is clearly in many ways easier for everybody. So.
I'll go along with whatever. I like meeting in person. It's good, but Zoom is effective for people that have to travel to the meeting, as well as people who are not going to be able to be attending meetings in the near future. Good luck with your surgery.
And I've actually, for their edification, I've actually been in the quorum, 2 or 3 times now, sitting in the parking lot of Kohl's in New Jersey.
Yes.
While my son and my brother are running rampant through Kohl's clothing store. I've been in the parking lot for 2.5 hours on my phone.
I'm okay with either one.
Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds to me like Zoom is kind of preferred. So we can have our regular meetings via Zoom. I know you scheduled both, right?
Always prepared. I built this for both.
All right. We're so lucky to have you, Jeff. Well, we're lucky to have you both.
Never leaving.
Any other commissioners' comments?
So real quick,
Oh.
so we want our next meeting on August the 11th then will be via Zoom.
Yeah.
And then we'll be on Zoom for regular agended meetings going forward until we have to deal with the governor's order again. And then we'll deal with the regulations separately.
I've heard today that there was a move afoot to actually codify it, to actually put it into the legislative, so it can be a permanent thing.
Yes, that is definitely running around, but until they do it,
We don't
I think
know.
we're at the mercy of the governor's order.
Yeah. So yes, Jeff, I think Zoom for regular meetings.
Okay.
And if anything changes, we'll.
And obviously, we can always schedule special meetings and things for normal procedures if we want to be in person or do whatever. Like, I don't know. I think having the flexibility is nice.
We need all working microphones if we're going to be in person. Well, that one's been out since like before COVID, so.
Yeah, this one has been a problem for like 3 years,
Yeah.
and that one is not too
So
far
we
behind.
gotta get,
Up and down.
gotta get on it.
I have a comment, Madam Chair.
Yes, Seth.
2 small comments. The first is, Jeff, do we have any further update about the Sac-a-Japon that program project?
On me, no, but yes, we do. I will send that. I believe they're actually getting
Okay.
We're getting what?
removed.
Oh, wow.
So it's not widgeon grass in there?
No, they're getting removed for other reasons too.
What's getting removed?
The pond mats.
So I guess Thais will come in front of us?
Yes, she'll be
Okay,
here.
all right. And Seth, you said you had a second?
That's a whole nother nightmare in and of itself,
All
right?
right.
So,
Seth still has one more, and then I'll go to you, Ian.
And then quickly, I was in an MACC session about writing effective orders of conditions, and one of the representatives said that one thing that they put in every single order that I don't know if we want to do moving forward or not, or and maybe it's in our general conditions, not in our special conditions already, is that whenever there's a wetland, they put a condition that says no dumping of products within that wetlands. I think it's obvious if somebody did dump that we would write an enforcement on them anyways, but they said to just put that in because it backs you up a little bit. I don't really care. I'll leave that to Jeff, but that was one of the recommendations by MACC.
I'll take a look. That may be in the standard conditions that the town issues. I'll take a look. I feel like we do have something that prohibits that, but I'll take a look. And if not, we need to go through and edit. There's a sheet of 2 conditions that the commission adds to the order that's kind of the town standard conditions. We probably are due for a little edit of those too, so we'll get it in there.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Seth, for your comments. Ian, I know you've been chomping at the bit.
I have, thank you, Ashley. And I'm chomping at the bit over 18 Washing Pond Road. And I think when you go along, we're all aware when we try to walk along the beach on the North Shore, how hard it is to do it uninterrupted, because a number of these bulkheads intrude into the water even at low tide. And it's absolutely clear to me that the bulkhead at 18 Washing Pond Road, that's why I read that out at the beginning, is out of compliance. And so I would like us to write the DEP and ask them to examine this bulkhead, give us an opinion about whether it's out of compliance, and if so, to force them into compliance by putting steps that really work. And we're going to be facing this. We've faced it on a number of issues already. And, you know, my memories go back to the early 50s in this island when it was like a private park practically. And all of us can remember before the bulkheads when you could walk anywhere you wanted to. And that's something that I feel is worth trying to bequeath to future generations and is within our purview. So I would wish for your support there at some level so that we can actually draw this to the DEP's attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. And I saw your hand up, Mark. I worry about just targeting 18 Washing Pond, but I do think it's worth writing a letter so that DEP evaluates numerous Chapter 91 licenses on Nantucket for their validity.
Or Tristram's.
Yeah.
I certainly don't mean to be singling it out because, of course, you know, 150 yards, 200 yards to the west is 25 East Tristram's Road. And that's exactly, you know, a modern building. It's not it's not pre-78. And again, you can't get around it there.
Mark, you want to?
Well, I was going to echo what you were saying. I mean, I live in the Pulpus area and walk along the Quay shore. That's now blocked. The whole row of bulkheads there where at low tide, you can't go around. And there's no way to get up and over. They're unfriendly bulkheads. They're stone, in some cases concrete or steel. And their grandfather, we had one repaired a year ago. I think we had an order to repair one. Yeah. So yeah, and I think we shouldn't single one out. We should write DEP and say, or under Chapter 91, when do you begin to call the homeowner and say, you got to fix the problem or make it go away? I think that should be a generic question.
Right.
Do they ever send inspectors down here on Chapter 91?
So I went online to look at this a few days ago, and it turns out that they're swamped. So they've got hardly anybody paying attention to this. And there was something like there's been, 400 applications for Chapter 91 licenses between, don't quote me, 1880 and 1970, and 4,000 applications since 1970. I mean, it's a staggering difference, and they're way behind. They just don't have the personnel to deal with it, so.
That's too bad, because they go through all this fermenting of issuing chapter 91s, and they expect you to comply with the chapter 91s, and all of a sudden they don't comply with the chapter number 91, and
It's just
they can't enforce their own regulations.
It's the same with natural heritage and pesticide
Right.
work. It's
Fertilizer.
everything. Mark, do you have another
Fertilizer thing
question or
irritates me.
comment?
My neighbor in Pulpus who purchased the old Pink House property, if that rings some bells with you.
Yes, I know.
Psyche Lucas.
Solved the no piers or wharfs problem in Nantucket. He bought a tracked vehicle that becomes a boat when it gets in the water. So he drives up his pretty steep ramp and then parks in his front yard. And then when he's ready to go in the water, he turns it around. God knows how much of a tear up he does when he turns it around.
I feel
but
like
it's
you
a
remember
tank.
that should be reported to Jeff.
Yeah.
When that thing came up on Code 2 a few years ago, or similar,
Good to know, Mark.
yeah.
Well, do you remember the VW things didn't the VW things float in the water too?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but I mean, it was interesting solution to the no docks or piers.
We told him
An
when he bought it,
illegal
he didn't
vehicle
get a
boat
dock.
That Jeff's
Yeah.
hopefully gonna look
We'll look
into,
at $600,000 vehicle.
that they might not be able to use. So,
I will speak to our harbor minister.
Don't mention my name, please.
so Jeff, do you think it's feasible that the commission draft a letter of this nature, or do you think it's kind of out of our wheelhouse?
No, certainly. I don't think writing a letter to Mass Waterways requesting them to come and provide some guidance to how to deal with some of these and to come do inspections and some of these permits. I mean, I've requested them to come do inspections before just from our office, so I don't think it's inappropriate at
You
all.
might want to come during August or September.
Yes, they might want to do that.
We have
Oh.
rooms, I have a room for them,
Oh, they,
and I'm sure Mark does too, right?
they usually
Well, maybe-
want to have like a good handful to do, so I think if we give them a number to take a look at, that'll be there, but, I mean, everyone hit the nail on the head. I think there's like 3 of them.
I mean, the South Shore
Cover
is
the state.
pointless and Sconset's pointless. But you've got all of the North Shore,
And
you've got
areas of the inner
Quays,
harbor.
you've got Sackagee, you've got all these,
The state's just
Very
woefully
specific
understaffed
areas.
for all of these. I mean, when you look at like herbicide and pesticide in the state, there's essentially 1 guy per region, and they just can't cover. I mean, there's just not enough of them, and it's just how it is. So you got to stack them up, and if you can give them 10 or 15 to come look at, this is how it will go. They'll come down. I'll have to assign someone from our office to just drive them around from spot to spot for a day or 2. And then they'll go back and decide what they're going to do. They'll come and take pictures and do that, but we're happy to do that. We've
well,
done
at
it with
least
them
it's,
before.
at least it's, hopefully they'll acknowledge that there's an issue.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Jeff, do you want us to make a motion?
No, I think what we'll do is I'll just take those as instructions and we'll put it together, and then we'll review the draft at the next meeting, and you guys can make a motion to issue, because
Okay.
I also will specifically post it as an agenda item, so you guys can formally move to do it and not have to worry about open meeting law issues and things.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you for bringing that up, Ian.
Well, thank you, everybody, for agreeing that it's an issue.
Any other commissioners' comments? We'll turn it over to Jeff for administrator staff reports.
No, I think we covered everything that I wanted to. Thanks, everyone.
Cool.
And we're still in limbo with Superior Court, so executive session will push until
Still
we
waiting.
have more.
You've heard nothing, Jeff, on the,
No, I even emailed with Ben today about it a couple times, and we're all just waiting.
So we're just basically waiting for the decision before.
From the
Yeah,
judge,
doing
and
it.
he
Yeah.
can take a very, very
He can
long
take up
time.
to
I think
6
we're
months
just
to a
very
year.
Optimistic that he might issue a decision soon.
He seemed to indicate, from what I've heard, that he wasn't going to take this usual 6 months to a year. I thought he was going to do this much quicker.
Right, that was the impression I think
Yeah.
many of us
I would
had,
say
so-
all of the attorneys from both sides and everything indicated that he was trying, he understood the significance of the decision to the community, and he wanted to get it out as quickly as possible and still be thorough and correct.
All right, so now we just need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make
So
a motion
moved.
to adjourn. I'll second.
All right, motion made by Seth, seconded by Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this meeting is adjourned. It was nice seeing everybody in person this one time, and hopefully
Goodbye, Ashley, huh?
you get to see my kitchen, living room, office.
And your dog
Good
nudging
thing they
your
didn't make a
elbow.
big investment in our name tags, right?
She's a-
Might be a message there.
Yes.
The signature page for 1 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Lisa mentioned that.